more disillusioned with some of the offerings. I don't know. Anyway, David, hello. Oh, hang on, David. Sorry. Let's start again. I've got you on the right button now. David, hello.
Hi. We're away, are we?
We're away.
We're connected, yeah. Actually, when you were talking about current affairs there, in part, is that perhaps because the media has tended to swing towards more an infotainment style?
Absolutely, that's what it is. We don't really... I mean, 7 Sharp bears no comparison to probably what it was intended to be back when it was the Holmes Show or Close Up or whatever.
Yeah, well, I can remember good old Dr. Brian Edwards.
Oh, of course. Actually, it's funny. I remember when the Holmes Show was on, it was criticised for being a bit lightweight at times. But it looks positively like BBC's Hard Talk compared to the way the current affairs goes now.
Is Hard Talk still going?
I think so.
Is it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, I don't know. I'll find out. Anyway, I can find out right now if you like. BBC Hard Talk. I'm pretty sure it is. Looks like it.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, carry on.
I used to like I don't know if he was the original guy on it, but the one I watched a few years ago, I think it was a balding guy or bald-headed guy, and he was pretty good.
Oh, no, Hard Talk was... I think if you probably did a Google on the best of Hard Talk, you'd probably have some fantastic interviews.
Yeah. But anyway, just on this Winston thing, first of all, just in the general sense, it's interesting how quite often with we humans that we fairly quickly can resort to personal attacks. And often, of course, that's a pretty sure indicator that the person involved hasn't really got a valid argument to put up in response. In other words, they haven't got a thought-through, considered response to an issue or an argument to put forward. So they're grasping around to try and fire something back.
That's a pretty bad indictment on Winston, because he's always personally attacking, which means he never has an argument.
Well, I mean, I must admit I do like a fighter, and there's a time to fight.
Yeah.
But just in the more general sense, yes, so often, and of course you get that on social media. People just say, it's one thing, okay, people obviously sometimes don't like what you're saying. I get that. Not a problem. But of course, instead of coming through with a reasonable or considered counterpoint, they haven't got one or can't be bothered or haven't thought it through. So they just resort to personal abuse and attacks.
Yeah.
And it's a surefire indicator they haven't got a valid argument to put.
How should politicians respond, for instance? So Winston didn't really want to say that he was talking predominantly about China. He said, it's about other influences in the region and all that sort of thing. How would you, if you're pressed about a speech you've made where you're clearly indicating, look, we don't like the China's, encroachment in the South Pacific, or the South China Sea and things. How would you answer those questions?
It's a very interesting one. That obviously we can understand in the diplomatic field the need to be diplomatic, but it does end up, and I was thinking about that, and it's what prompted me to ring, is you end up talking around in little circles and darting around the bush and really not saying anything much, because actually precisely who are you talking about? What are these influences? And if you're going to raise these issues, at some point, hard as it might be, delicate as it might be, at some point you're going to have to start naming names.
Yeah, so...
Otherwise it's pointless.
I mean, Hosking was right to... I mean, look, we're talking about... That's the thing, he was right to press him on it because he had made these comments, and I guess was it always going to be a stalemate? He's going to say, well, look, I'm not... I thought actually that Winston did sort of... when he talked about the nuanced sort of nature of foreign relationships, and I'm not going to, we're not going to be pressed any further on which particular countries, because in my job, that's as far as I'm prepared to go. I mean, he did sort of seem to almost get there, but then it all sort of came unstuck.
I suppose he's saying, well, look, I'm really relying on you, the audience, to join the dots together, but it gets to the point where it's rather, well, just that, a pointless exercise.
Well, what about when Jacinda's asked, did you raise human rights with China on her first visit to the country? And the media, it's almost like one of those, here's an easy way for me to make the Prime Minister look uncomfortable. It doesn't really serve us very well, does it?
Well, on the other hand, of course, if you have, I suppose there's a time and place where you can raise these matters, but if you are going to have an honest, frank relationship with another country, another power, then you should be able to raise some, shall we say, curly questions.
Oh, no, you absolutely should do. I just was thinking about the context of the question, whether it was really something that was on the radar as one of the predominant questions for them to put on our screens. Oh, we asked the Prime Minister about this. It's like, surely if the purpose for her visit was to build a relationship, most of the conversations, most of the important questions were maybe not the human rights questions this time round. Is that fair to say, or am I in danger of skirting over an important issue?
I mean, it could be, in the sense that you're trying to build a strategic relationship, and I do get it that any political leader, Prime Minister, certainly shouldn't allow themselves to be bulldozed into doing something that is counterproductive. So I suppose, yes, you're always bearing in mind, looking at the long term, the strategic relationship, but if there are some technical questions in there that sometimes have to be raised, then they should be, just as other countries should feel perfectly free to do the same with us. Our relations. I think we're big enough generally, big enough and old enough, and should be mature enough to deal with these things and handle these things, as I said before, in a general sense of debating and discussion. I mean, it's an ideal, but I understand we're human beings, and sometimes we feel, gosh, I'm losing ground here, so I've got to try and get something back or whatever. But you really should be able to discuss in a reasoned, considered manner interesting issues, rather than just descend into personal abuse.
Yeah. So,
shouldn't you?
Yeah, no, I absolutely. Absolutely. That's why I thought that Winston, sort of lost that one a bit, because in the end he ended up thinking that it was more credible for him to attack Hosking than to answer the question. And I mean, and you might accuse him of lacking a certain level of, he's got a sense of humour, Winston, but you might be able to accuse him of lacking a certain level of quick-wittedness where he couldn't deal with a question like that without deciding, okay, I'm just going to attack you now. So I think he lost.
I did notice that the tone of the conversation became a little more convivial towards the end. It was almost like Winston was sort of warming a bit more towards Mike Hosking and sort of easing.
Even though he said, you need you need to do your job better, and I'll continue doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. But it was a little more jovial and a little more humorous and so on. But
well, that's part of Winston's charm, because he is charming.
He is. I know. He is. But he's a politician.
Oh, yeah.
And he's a clever politician. And never forget that. And I think in some ways he's cut from the same cloth as one Mr. Muldoon. But he's I suppose he's one of us our more how shall I put it, colourful characters in politics.
Yeah. No, you're right. And in his good moments, he's been great. He's great value. I just about said he has been, but he's not quite a has-been yet.
Tim, what was the show that you were going to do?
It was a concert of the music of James Bond.
I see.
With the Christchurch Symphony, and it was scheduled for. Well, we were in dress rehearsal. We were in rehearsal when we went from lockdown, not knowing what had gone on, into rehearsal, and then it was the next morning we had to make that decision. We made I made the decision, but it was just the stress around everything. It was so we've postponed it.
You called it, did you?
Yeah.
You called it off. It's not.
Well, yes, but in terms of how tortuous it was, I felt quite bad that, I don't know, you have a mixture of emotions and everything because it's a horrendous thing to happen. But, it was the only decision to be made. And I felt guilty that it took me a few hours to work out what it was because you have people saying, the show must go on and all that sort of stuff. So there was.
But there's no doubt that this music game at its best, is a magical game because it sort of transcends into that area where between language and music, which is an extension of our language, isn't it?
Well, actually, that's to be looking ahead to when we do it in May. The show, we were in the town hall when we were already in the town hall when we called it off. And look, it is. The music's spectacular. The orchestra sounds spectacular. The singers are amazing. It will be a stunning show. But we just needed to find another time to do it. And I'm glad we've come through that now. So yeah, make your way to 8th of May. Get on down to Christchurch there, David.
I will think about it, matey.
Good on you. It's called The Music Is Bond if you're Googling it. Like, how he says the name's Bond. It's The Music Is Bond. Yeah. Good on you.
Yep.
Nice to hear from you too.
Okay.
Cheers.
Bye.
Yeah, it's been a long time between drinks with David. I haven't spoken to him for a while, so nice to have him back there. Excellent. 18 minutes to 3.